This is the War Room Roundtable podcast, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant businessmen and women on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they've learned on the road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their successes into your life and business. The War Room Roundtable is brought to you by your hosts, Jason Miller, CEO of Strategic Advisor Board, and Phillip Lanos, CEO of Own the Rhythm, and former podcast host for Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine. Welcome to the War Room. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here. Tony, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm having the best day of my life.
Hey, not everybody starts off the conversation that
Well,
way.
I'm Italian, so I have to tell you why it's the best day, because somewhere along the line you're like, the best day? Because I always get, Tony, your wedding's not your best day. You're this, you're that. Well, let me make it really simple. I am Italian. I know I said that twice. I keep count. My refrigerator's full of food. My vehicles are all gassed up. At a moment's notice, we could just hit the road, and my wife is happy.
It's the best day of your life.
That's the best day of your life. I got to agree with that one.
This December, we will be together 30 years.
Oh, wow. Man,
That's nice.
commitment is just something that doesn't exist anymore in today's generation. I mean, I don't say that with a bitter pill. I'm happy with who I'm with, but man, the stories I hear, the things I hear from my friends and their struggles, it's a lost art to commit to something, and we'll get into that in a bit because it's
maybe
not
we could bring some of that back, because I take that long-lasting tenure idea into my show, which is done okay over the past six and three quarters years.
Yeah, let's get into that. And before we do any of this, I gotta know my favorite question to kick things off with. It's just what we do here traditionally. Do you yourself come from a family of entrepreneurs?
Absolutely not. My father, well, actually, let me think about that. My father grew up, my grandfather was a farmer. He had a farm in Sicily, which is still in his name to this day, and he did come to the United States. And I'm not sure of how he started, but he happened to do, let's call it the wrong thing. He scrimped and saved and bought an apartment building and bought another one. And as soon as he did that, we are Sicilian. I'm born in Sicily, believe it or not. I grew up in Chicago, so sometimes that little Chicago accent comes out. But true story, as soon as the mafia found out that my grandfather was, paying for an apartment building, they thought he was rich, and they kidnapped my uncle and held him for ransom, which my grandfather refused to pay, and which I can tell you more about the story. But when it was all done, he went back to Italy, back to farming. So it's like, are we entrepreneur? Are the roots there or not? Nowhere in my family was that ever in any of the roots, though I was a paper route boy at the age of 5. Does that make me that makes me an entrepreneur, right?
Hey, look, after what you told me, like, I get it. No one's going to know what you're doing, how you're doing it. I get it. No, as soon as you said Sicilian, I was like, man, every Sicilian I've ever met is just like straight up real. And I know why. And to hear such a story, I mean, what that does when you own property and then people assume whatever they want to assume and how that leads to things. It's just crazy, man, and that's just a different time, to be alive in. But you are an entrepreneur, or else you wouldn't be here. And our origins influence the decisions that we make, right? That's why I love asking that question. So did you always know that growing up, or did you find all that history out later as you got older?
I didn't know I was an entrepreneur until I started podcasting.
Wow.
Because I focused on entrepreneurs and small business owners. I was a paper route boy, and then I was in fast food. And then in 19, I worked all my life. And then in 19, I went into corporate America, worked there like 32 years, and that's some good war room stories there. Because nobody's going to believe how the corporate structure existed back then. It is just it's just a whole nother time. It's just so different. But then in 2007, I went and formed my own company in lead generation. So then I guess that's when I went back to being an entrepreneur. If you count the years and my newspaper, it's like 32 years corporate and 29, almost 30 years as an entrepreneur.
Oh, wow. And those newspaper years count for sure, man. I don't care what anybody says. That taught you the valuable lesson of being able to make money at a profit.
Well, the one thing it taught me, which is kind of weird, because you don't hear it anymore, but believe it or not, I understand the value of a dollar. I worked on Lake Shore Drive in windy Chicago 7 days a week delivering papers, getting up at 4:30, 5 something in the morning, 5 something in the morning, yeah, 5:30ish. And it didn't matter if it was literally minus 70 degrees below zero. I mean, I've been through those days. And the wind's enough to knock a small boy down on the ground, not even joking. So a dollar to me is really, really precious. It kind of sounds strange to say, but money has a big value to me because of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's hard work right there. And that's kind of been the running theme for today too, is the idea of work ethic and what that looks like today and the calls that we had. So yeah, no undermining the value of an earned dollar for sure. So you start your own lead gen company, and brilliant way to get into business. Every business is going to need leads. That's just part of the course. Although some people do it right and some people don't. Like the people who send you a message, hey, you're wearing the same shirt as me. You want a mobile app? How about 32 leads a week? Like that turns into another thing. But that I imagine that wasn't the process or the steps you took, because you ended up in podcasting and what that's going like. So I want to bridge that gap now. So you launched a lead gen company during the podcast days?
No, after I'll go back just like 7 years, happens to be 7 years. Year 2000, I helped form a company and I did the fundraising. And in like 6 months, this is before really we even knew what to do with the internet. In 6 months, I raised $3.25 million from just friends, family, and just literally people I met. I was just really good at it. And then I took the position at the company of VP sales and marketing, and the whole thing was driving insurance leads for people for auto and home insurance and things like that. So I just learned a lot about lead gen. And then in the year 2007, I had the opportunity to do my own thing and be the CEO and run my own company doing that. So I took that entrepreneurial leap and went into lead gen myself, learning all sorts of stuff. And there's so much I will share, and I'm glad to share. But what happened is, just like in the past 2 years, we had major international issues. I call it, it's just crazy, what's happened, the world shutdown, lockdown and stuff. Well, I had 4 of those in 7 years on what we did, where government ruling came and said, you can't do this anymore. You got to do this. And I go into the office one day on a Monday. One of my clients, I'm doing $1 million a year in sales on, is selling leads. And they all of a sudden they cancel. It's like, why? What happened? I had multiple clients. It was like, what happened? Another federal regulation came down, blah, 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 and brought us down to our knees. We had to retool everything. And I got really tired of it. And I kept hearing this word, Phillip, podcast. I'm like, what is this? And then when I found out, I was like, hey, I can do this. I'm Italian. I can talk. So I just literally did the leap of faith we're now into fall 2015. I studied whatever was available on the internet, which wasn't very much, about how to podcast, and doing the Italian thing. I just on the seat, by the seat of my pants training. I started, don't do this, live 1 hour. don't don't do it if you've never done radio or podcasting before. But me, hey, I did it and I learned so much. I learned never to do live again. In a way, now I will. And I just went on the podcast and I used my knowledge of lead generation to get people to promote. Hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm here. I just learned from the big boys, AT&T, Chevrolet, Pepsi-Cola, McDonald's, Mercedes-Benz. Every single word I just said. Why? Because McDonald's spent $750 million like 2 years ago, but they make 22 billion. So they keep saying, we're here, we're here, we're here. So I just learned that as part of lead gen. You have to keep telling people you're there. The companies you don't know of anymore stopped promoting. It's that simple.
Wow. It's funny when you got into the podcast game, that was around the same time I had done it, which probably explains why we know a lot of the same people. Because I had just started going in that direction coming out of a marketing agency in New York. So it's really peculiar. Wow. I was wondering, it was when I saw your name, I was like, why do I feel like I know this name? And then I went to go take a look on LinkedIn. And I was like, why do we have so many people in common? And now it's all starting to make a little more sense. Man, what a story. And it started off with a bang. I mean, quite literally, we're talking about your journey from the beginning and inception as like your family and what entrepreneurship looked like, right? The stories that happened there, the transition from corporate life that's equally as long a tenure as now your entrepreneurial life. What a dynamic to be in. And now that you're here, you were talking about this a little before, and I want to turn it over to Jason shortly after this, but you were talking about how your show has now reached a certain number of downloads of all time, and it's a big accomplishment. You want to share that with us?
I joined Voice America 2017. By 2018, I'm not sure the exact date, maybe by 2017, but for sure by 2018, I was their number one show on Voice America. And in June this year, I became the number one show on Chartable worldwide. And I just do a lot of promotion. I'm not sure if that actually answers your question, but it's just really just a lot of promotion. And that's what I do full time. My show is just an hour a week, but I promote it so much. I've got such a system that I actually now do this for other podcasters. I'm their secret weapon. And I've helped some of my clients get to millions of downloads. But I don't think I answered your question exactly. But I answered part of it. What was the rest of it?
Yeah, just how many downloads? Can you share that with us? Just because it was such a big accomplishment.
Oh. You're right, because we talked about it off air, so I didn't give it to you. Yeah, this weekend we're walking into 33 million listens and streams and downloads of the Tony DUrso show. Most of that is audio. It's a preponderance is audio. It's kind of 33 million is pretty cool.
I mean, man, that's a legitimate accomplishment. 5,000 podcasts are created every day. And out of all those, most of them never even get past episode 3, which is just why, it's a real
because there's a word in the dictionary called pod fade. And that, the last time I looked, says, most episodes do 7, 8, 9, 10. And I know some people that have done 7, 8, 9, 10, and they're gone, they're out. And it's like, it's just amazing. There's a place where I go not far. I just love their ice cream. Now, I'm not an ice cream person, but I'm just bringing this up as a case in point. And every so often when we're in that neck of the woods, I go and get an ice cream, which is like a couple times a month maybe. And this time one of the cashiers, whatever you call them, clerks, was a younger lady, and she's in high school, and she was like, I don't know how the conversation goes. She goes, I don't know what to do with my life. I go, what you need to do is learn to podcast. I go, just do it. I go, that's where the future is. And that's what I say to everybody, because there's so much you can do. I could do a whole series. I probably should. If you guys want to join me, we'll do a whole series, because the opportunities are so amazing when you dial into it. I just can't say enough. I don't want to capitalize your whole show and want to give Jason a chance to say hi and bye, but podcasting is where it's at. It's like 2.2 million people podcast now, and like 75-80% or more don't make it to year 2.
Yeah, not even past episode 12.
Exactly.
Jason did 40 in like 2 weeks when he first started this.
Good job, Jason. You're ahead of the curve.
Well, we're on I think tomorrow we'll publish episode 200 in 5 months.
Yeah,
That's
man.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
You're cranking.
it's been just a blur really, but
I'm at about 500, not quite 500. I just do one a week.
yeah. Well, there's a whole reason why all this happened. So Phillip he was the host over at Inc. and Entrepreneur Magazine, and I was on the show over there. And then it inspired me 5 months ago, and I thought, God, I should do a podcast, right? And really having zero expectation that it was going to be something fantastic or anything. And I got about 40 or 50 episodes into it, and it started actually taking traction. And I was like, And I went over to Phillip, and I was like, they don't need you. I think you need to come over here and do this with me. And now we're, it's not like we're massively huge or anything, but we're pushing 1,000 downloads a day. So
that's great.
It's not millions, but for us ranking at 1.5% already, hey, I'm pretty happy with that.
That's fantastic. Good on you. Next year, you're going to hit 1 million.
Man, I hope so. Yeah.
All we got to do is do an episode with you.
I'll give you some tips too.
Straight up, man. No, it's I just love the evangelism that you bring to podcasting, because as somebody whose life has changed because of podcasting, I as well am a big evangelist of it. And I wish I would have done more with my own shows early on, but I spent a lot of my time actually opposite of you. I was helping others with their shows most of the time first, and I'm only now stepping into it on this side of the table. But either way, it's a valuable education, because you can't be in this space without having an understanding of business, an understanding of marketing, an understanding of copy. And there's so many skills that carry over into doing it right. Unless you have a team that does that for you, that's different. But it can definitely be a liberal arts, if you will, type of profession if you get into it in the business world. So I share your excitement for the industry.
I can't say enough about podcasting. It is the greatest thing. It is my calling. And when I started, part of this is people go, "Oh, Tony, you worked in corporate 32 years." I'm just making this up. Nobody's ever said it. Don't you dare say it now. Like, you must know a lot of people. No, I had zero audience. I had zero downloads. I knew zero lead entrepreneurs. It was just like, but it made sense to me to connect people that made it with people that are working to build their business, which nowadays I say, startups, entrepreneurs, small businesses. But back then I didn't even know the nomenclature, but I just knew I needed to connect them. And that's just where and how I started. I didn't know anybody, but no matter what you podcast on, it won't even take you 2.5 seconds to just find a whole list of experts in your field. That's what I did. I went on social media. I went on Twitter, and I'm seeing who's posting, boom, 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 boom. And then I reached out and said, "Hey, I'd love to interview you on my show." I got the Canadian equivalent of Tony Robbins, Dov Barron, on my show. I've had him on my show several times, and he's been on mine. And I found so many people. I read their posts. I go, "I like what you're saying. Can I interview you?" And it was just boom, yes, yes, yes. Who says no to being interviewed on a podcast? There's a little secret there. Of course they'll say yes. And if they say no, then maybe there's a little bit of an ego, because I'll go on shows. Last week I was on a show, they had less than 100 downloads. But I gave them a lot of tips, a lot of encouragement, and I just do that because that's where I'm at this point, is helping others. Been through all mine. I've made my life and claim. And now it's really about helping others. As I told you, my wife's happy. My refrigerator's full of food. Life is great. So let me bring that to others. And therein lies the key on podcast success. I think one of the keys is the really helping of the others.
Here's the interesting thing, right? Is, I even look at my journey through life, right? I spent 23 years in the military. I did business stuff on the side of that, built some really great companies while I did that. But then it was over. The military, it was time for me to go, right? So it's like, okay, well, what's the next chapter? And the cool thing is almost exclusively your calling is built out of necessity before you even find it. It's right there waiting for you. It's waiting for you to like whack. Whack your head.
You have to recognize it. Like when I had that fourth disaster in my business, which wasn't anything we did. It was all government rules and regulations and protocols. It was just like, you've got to be smart and take that as a knock on the door, an opportunity to go find what you can be in control of, which is the key thing podcasting does. Lets you be in control of your life.
For sure.
So true, man. I mean, I thought my entire life I was going to be a singer. I had been on MTV, Telemundo. You know, I thought I was going to be an actor. I was in commercials. And for whatever reason, not only could I not really find like I felt at home with most of the people in that industry, just different character. I found that I was really at home with business owners and the way they think and entrepreneurs and their values as people for the most part. And then I went to digital marketing and then landed in podcasting. And you're right. You're both right. There's just something about you falling into certain things. And it's not like it was the only thing I was ever good at. In fact, I feel like I've got a lot to learn when it comes to podcasting, in particular with the idea of sharing it and getting it to grow more specifically. I understand how to present it well, how to make sure you took care of all the other odds and ends. In fact, I'm convinced now that I must have come across you when you mentioned Dove Barron, because I used to edit EO's podcasts. I helped them launch their podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with EO. I think you have a lot of people there.
I've been on there. I've had John Lee Dumas on my show.
Yeah. So I used to edit a lot of that. So for me, it makes a lot of sense now. And I think that you're right. Everyone should look at podcasting for the opportunity it really is right now and step into it full force. But with that said, I also want to invite you to tell people, like, what are you doing right now? Because you sort of alluded to it. You're helping people. What are you doing right now that the listeners should know about?
Well, one thing on podcasting that makes it successful is it's because you love it and you'll get up in the morning and you'll work it, and it doesn't matter if you get paid. That's when you find that, then you're on the right podcast. But what I'm doing now, actually, I'm going to answer that question, but I haven't promoted it. I haven't told anybody, though it's on my website. For the past 6 years, I've been taking proceeds and helping feed the homeless, invalid, orphans, widows, widowers, and elderly. And we've now have the Southgate Foundation, which is now assisting us this year. So whatever I can, we're just submitting to and helping. And we've passed out like I want to say close to 130,000 meals that we've passed out in the past 6 years. It's just because that's just what we do. There's people, they need help. For example, one of the ladies we're helping, I mean, I'll tell you story after story. Her father, her husband, and her son were killed in a motorcycle accident like last year. She had a fire in June this year. Her 15-year-old oldest daughter is diabetic, was going to die. We paid for the insulin. We paid for the hospital fee because they needed certain monies that she didn't have. And we're actually going to go in and redo and repaint her house inside. This is just what we do because it's people that need help. Another one is a guy named Steve. He had a good job. His wife had a good job. 2 years ago, he fell off a ladder in his garage and hit his head, and he became pretty much a paraplegic.
Oh my God.
She quit her job. She sold their home, and she took him down to I don't want to mention names, a particular rehabilitation facility in the United States. It was like $20,000 a month. They didn't do much, but we helped with as much as we could on that. And we're going to put some videos up. He's actually standing with assistance now after 2 years. So it's things like this we do, and it's just heartwarming. It's called the Southgate Foundation. You'll find it at TonyDUrso.com. And what we're doing is people that want some of my services, or they want to grow their podcast, or they want us to market, we're donating it to them. Again, my refrigerator's full. My life is comfortable. So what can I do now? Well, God wants me to help others. And so that's what I'm doing. And you won't see it. You really won't see any social media on it. You won't see any posts, nothing. I don't really talk about it. I don't even talk about it on my shows or episodes. But because you asked the question, I'm mentioning it. It's just the biggest thing that's near and dear to my heart. It's just helping others. Some people just, and I'll keep telling you story after story, that they just need help. Their government can only do so much or can't do anything anymore. So then what?
Yeah. I mean, we all need people like that, man. Seriously, people in society that are just looking out. And I already know Jason's the fan of that, because Jason's about that too, man. It's always about win, win, win. How can the most people win? You know, how can entrepreneurs be more useful to more people in more ways, right? That's what it's all about. And man, you really embody that spirit. So thank you for sharing that. Jason, I feel like you have want to chime in on that?
So I want you to connect with, his name is Will Black, and he is the CEO of Sharing the Credit,
I have Will
sharingthecredit.com.
Black in my files. I think I'm going to be doing
You
an
do?
interview with him.
Okay, I
Will
want you to
Black,
connect
yeah.
with him, because he
Yep, he's there.
he has a lot well, he's my finance director in the strategic advisor board, but he also owns his own company. And they've given, I think this year they've given away over $1 million through their foundation. Anyway, I won't ruin it since you're going to talk to him, but man, that is such a great connection for you to make there.
And just a quick aside, I never did it. If you go to the my Southgate link on the page, you'll find why and how it started, of how we used to do toys for tots and toys for kids in the hospital. And it's 2.5 minute long video, something like that. It explains the whole story. And I never did it for accolades or acknowledgments. I still don't. But you get to a point where when you're helping others, doors are just, I know it sounds weird. It may sound strange to people, but other doors start opening for me. And the more I help others, the more things get better for my show, and more audience and more sponsors and everything. And it's a really interesting phenomenon. And it's just from helping with, a pure heart. So I highly recommend it. If your life is in good shape, join one of us and help, because it's a feeling you'll know when you're there. It's a great feeling.
Life's got to be about giving. Like, we're going on our 9th book. Actually, it just hit the shelf. 9th book. We give all the proceeds to Homes for Heroes. I've been doing that since 2014, when I published my very first book. And then we match it. So whatever the sales are, we match the sales, and donations go to Homes for Heroes. So,
Very cool.
At the end of the day, it's, if we can't help each other, then as a society, as human beings, as just basic people, there's a you in human, right? So.
Yeah. And this is, when you hear it from people, there's two sides. One is the people that want the accolades. Hey, I just donated my whole company of $25 billion to charity. Oh, who's the charity? My kid. There's that, right? There's that. But look at me, how great I am. And there's a lot of those on the internet, but something like what you're doing, something like with Southgate, I'm in it to help the people. So whatever, and I never talked about this before. So I just wanted to just say, it's just a really great cause, and there's a difference.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's funny, because my dad, growing up, he said, son, when you give back silently. Right?
That's right.
And I didn't understand what he meant by that for a lot of years. And being in the military and all that stuff. And one day it clicked. I understood what he meant. It's just like, give without return. You don't need to, the universe opens the doors for you when they need to be open. the deck gets shuffled where it needs to get shuffled, and just do good in the world. And
I'll give you a tip on that.
yeah,
When you do something for acknowledgement, hey, look at me, hey, look at me, that's it. You get nothing more. When you're
right.
silent and quiet about it, God's watching.
That's right.
He does something, and let him do what he does. And that is worth more than anything you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that reminds me so much of something I read when I was studying the Kabbalah, and it was talking about how, like, if you're able to, like, keep your ego in check when doing things like that, what it does to your life as a whole is nothing but abundance. If you could just keep your ego in check from going, oh, look at how good of a person I am. So I think it's brilliant that you brought that up, man.
You got the nail on the head. It's ego. Keep your ego in check. Learn what it is. And I've gone through my own training, self-training in a way on that. And when you can get rid of that, you move into a whole new paradigm shift in your life. And you'll know, those that are there know what I'm talking about. If you hit this level, there's probably levels above me. I'm sure I'm not at the top, but it's just, it just changes the whole thing. And that's really helped me get a lot of downloads and listeners, though that's not why I do it, but it just kind of goes hand in hand with it. And we're all speechless for a moment.
Yeah.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah, for sure. He must have froze.
Yeah, man. I'm a big fan.
There you are.
Oh,
Oh, you're good.
Oh, there we are. Okay.
You're back.
Huh.
Interesting. You were like a popsicle there for a minute.
That's crazy.
He was pondering that thought because it was very deep, and I
It
respect
was.
that.
It was deep.
It was profound. It must be something going on with Spectrum. What do I pay those guys for? They just sent me an email the other day. Congratulations, you've been moved up to speeds. No, I haven't. Looks like you moved me down. No, I'm a big fan of the philosophy, the ethos that you're kicking. And I think it's only fair at this point in the conversation to ask, like, if you could leave behind just like explicitly some type of advice, whether you'd give it to your younger self or anyone facing an obstacle, what would that be?
How many episodes are we going to do? Because I'll say there's profound advice. If you want to grow in your podcast or anything, take a look at who are the leaders in your industry. And do, in a kind way, start stalking them. I'm serious. Make them be your secret mentor. You know, I have talked about that a lot. You know, John Lee Dumas doesn't know it, but I talk about him a lot. He's a secret mentor. I'll go to his website. I'll look at his shows. I'll listen to his interviews. What's he doing? What should I learn? Yeah. And I learn from him and others in the industry. And call them a secret mentor, and just, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? You know, there's people, and I don't want to mention names too much, but you know, there's people, they've got people they pay 6 digits to come up with those words to put on their Twitter profile. And all of a sudden, if you see the person go, I'm a husband, dad, and a father, there's a reason he says that. He may be worth $2 billion, but there's a reason he says that in his Twitter profile. And I learn from people like that. So when I say secret mentor, I mean, look at what they're doing and ponder and think about, why are they doing that? Why is that important? It is so that has been my mentorship in growing my podcast. What are the leaders of my industry doing? I can't say that enough. And there's a lot to it, no matter whether you're growing orchids, you're wrenching on cars, whatever you're podcasting about, what are the leaders doing? And look literally at the leaders, because they pay people big marketing bucks to write that post that says blah, blah, blah. Well, why? So start getting your brain around that, and you're going to find and get some aha moments and grow as well. I do that constantly.
That's probably the single most, you're right. Learn off somebody else's dime. Seriously, like they literally paid for all that. And if you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, and you pay close enough attention, you too can be a beneficiary of that work. If you're humble enough to open yourself to that that learning. I think it's beautiful, man.
Yeah. And by the way, nothing of mine looks like John Lee Dumas, entrepreneur on fire for everybody out there. But I'd say, oh, this is good. Oh, I like this. It's, you're a kid in a candy store, and it's all transparent. I have people that have modeled their podcasts from me. I think that's great. Find what works for you and resonates. I just wanted to make that part clear.
Yeah, no. It's 100%. What is it? Austin Kleon wrote a book, but I don't think he came up with the phrase, good artists steal, but great artists borrow, or something like that. Good artists borrow, but great artists steal. Like literally it's the idea itself, and then turn it into your own thing. No, 100%. With that said, I think we're in good time for the grand finale, if there's no objections.
Yeah, let's do it. Roll it out.
Some water.
It's 20th Century Fox.
You're not going to get any,
right? I didn't pass the audition yet.
Yeah, you're not going to get any beatboxing, I guess.
Oh no, I got you.
By the way, I'm not sure. I'm really getting to like the show. Can I come back?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It would be a pleasure, man. Seriously. The question we love asking as we close things out, similar to the way we open it up. If you could have invited anybody to be a part of this conversation, the one we had today specifically here, if you took a moment to reflect, who would you have loved to have had here for this moment, and why?
That's probably the most difficult question I've ever been asked live on the spot. If there was one person that I would like to know, I would like to have sit here and see, believe it or not, is my mom. But she's in heaven and she's watching, so she's already here and she sees what's going on. She's very proud of me. So I know that part's good. I'm not sure who else. I think of, I don't want to say anything wrong. There's nobody in contemporary times. One of the things I do as a pastime, if that even makes sense, is called a pastime, is I love researching history, and I love researching who, what, when, where on my own, as opposed to what you read, because what you read is just what somebody wrote. Well, I could write "This is history" and publish it and say, there you go. So I would just love to speak to some of the people that built some of these beautiful buildings, that we're told we can't build anymore. You see, a post office. It's like, it's a palace, or a state capitol. Who built this with a gold dome? Like, what? I mean, these are things you see with your eyes. It's like, I would just love to speak to one of those builders. That may or may not be the exact question, because you want somebody that's going to sit here with me on a podcast that'll go like, what's that? So maybe I've gone too far in the back.
No, I love it, man. It's funny. I actually recommend it's one of the, I listen to very few podcasts because I don't always have a lot of time, but one of the ones I always go to if I'm going on a run or what have you, that doesn't have anything to do with business, just to give me a break, is actually, it's not even a really popular one. It does okay, but it's called How to Take Over the World. And this guy just reviews great people, like whether they were good people or bad people is different, but they were great in the way that they had an impact on a lot of people, from Napoleon to Elon, to you name it, you know what I mean? Like, but it goes through a deep history through many sources that are cited in the beginning. So I think you'd find that fascinating. And that's again, coming back to the theme of this conversation, that's the beauty of podcasting and what it's doing for the world of today. Just like us having conversations with people like you and other entrepreneurs and people who are literally impacting people's lives by having reached a level of success that pushed them to, after a certain, you can only get so much money before you go, how do I give back to the world? I'm drowning in abundance here. Well, the only way to grow now is to give some of it away. And that's what we love to cover, to make that point and iterate that point every single time, every single conversation. And that's the beauty. So thank you for sharing that you have an interest in architecture on top of everything else, because that just goes to show the kind of well-roundedness that an entrepreneur can be, and that people shouldn't be afraid of the things that they're interested in. And that can be the podcast that you do, you don't always have to be an expert. You can be an enthusiast. That's something that people get wrong all the time. But with that said, I wanted to let Jason roll us out as is traditional here.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you so much for being here. This was a great episode. And I say it was a great episode, not even necessarily because of the business conversation, right? Because of the different conversation, right? And, it's refreshing to have a little bit of a different tweaked conversation, but then get so much out of that conversation. And, these are the things the world is missing right now, right?
Yes.
Is the outside the box stuff. And the more we embrace this stuff, and the more we populate it around the world, the less angry of a world we're going to have. And share the love, more love, pile it on. And maybe that's weird coming from me because nobody hears me talk like that. But
especially with a gun, camouflage, and a very sharp knife behind
The soldier of love.
Somebody who hasn't left the war days alone.
Call me. That's
okay. Yes,
my new
share
thing.
the love.
That's my new thing. I am a soldier of love. I'm going to embrace that.
It took a lot of violence to be this gentle.
That's right.
I understand that.
That's awesome. But Tony, no, this was a great conversation. I hope you can come back and we can do another version of this again. And I had a great time. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you for the honor to be on your show. I thank you so much, gentlemen. It was great.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the War Room Roundtable with your hosts, Jason Miller and Phillip Lanos. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and always remember, if you can dream it and believe it, then you can go achieve it. We'll see you in the next episode.